Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Neuroscience edition of 5-Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at cells of the nervous system, or the two main types of cells that make up our nervous system, neurons and glial cells. Then we'll focus on the neuron to understand the different parts and their functions. And finally, we'll look at how these cells are organized in the nervous system. Our nervous system has two main types of cells, glial cells and neurons. What's the difference? Well, think of glial cells as the support for neurons. They nourish, repair, protect, and insulate neurons. And although they weren't thought to have any role in neural communication, recently we learned that they can modulate it, make it easier or harder for some neurons to communicate with each other. Neurons, on the other hand, are directly involved in communication. They assimilate and transmit signals that they receive from many other neurons. Our nervous system has 4 types of glial cells, each with different functions. Astrocytes are the largest type of glial cell, so named because they're sort of star-shaped. One of the functions of astrocytes is the blood-brain barrier, or ensuring that many pathogens can't pass from the blood to the brain, while smaller molecules like oxygen and hormones can. These cells also have a role in neuromodulation, impacting how neurons communicate with each other. Next, we have oligodendrocytes, and these function to myelinate the axons of neurons in the central nervous system. What this does is essentially insulate the part of the neuron that transmits information, making it better. There are also microglia that work to remove any cells in the central nervous system that are damaged by injury or disease. Finally, there are Schwann cells that function by myelinating the axons of neurons in the peripheral nervous system with an insulating coating. So they're very similar to oligodendrocytes, just located in the peripheral nervous system instead of the central nervous system. Now the neuron, the cell designed for communication with other neurons. Know that neurons come in many different shapes and sizes, and they vary in how much they're connected with other neurons. But we'll look at all the parts that all neurons have and the functions of these parts using the stereotypical neuron in the figure. Each neuron has a cell body that contains all of the metabolic machinery to maintain the neuron. Radiating off of the cell body are many dendrites, or branch-like extensions that receive signals from other neurons. Dendrites are the input side of the neuron. If the cell body receives enough positive inputs to send a signal, it transmits that signal down the axon, which you can think of as the output side of the neuron. The axon may branch off many times, but the signal traveling down each of these would always be the same. And if you want to know why, check out the action potential in neural communication. Finally, at the end of the axon is the axon terminal, also called terminal buttons in some places, and this is where the neurotransmitters are stored, the chemicals used in neural communication. Throughout the nervous system, neurons and glial cells are organized in different ways. For instance, if we took a slice of brain, we'd find that the outermost cover on the brain, also known as the cerebral cortex or gray matter, is made up of neurons that are arranged in distinct layers. More in the middle of the brain, there are regions where neurons are clustered together in very compact areas called nuclei. And finally, there are areas made up primarily of glial cells, and visually it looks white, so it's called white matter. And it consists of tracts that connect distant brain regions so they can communicate with each other. We just looked at the 2 types of cells in our nervous system, neurons and glial cells, and we learned the functions of each. We also saw how they're organized in the brain. Aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?